Welcome to Oxford News This Week. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Terry Stiles. A Missouri plane crash claims the life of a local Oxford veterinarian, and 4 Oxford youths arrested in the stabbing of an Oakland County man.
All this and more, the Oxford News begins right now. A local veterinarian from Brandon Township recently died in a single-engine aircraft crash in Missouri. 57-year-old Elizabeth McGee was flying the plane alone on her way to visit family. McGee and her husband, Dr. Charles McGee, both practice at the North Oakland Veterinary Clinic in Oxford. Dr. McGee was the mother of 9 children and a proud grandmother. She was known for her passion and for missionary work and activities involving 4-H. Investigators have not yet determined the cause of the crash.
Surveillance video led to the arrest of 4 Oxford youths in connection with the stabbing of an Oakland Township man this past week. The Oakland Woods Estate man encountered the group in his car at 4:30 in the morning when he got in his car to go to work. Allegedly, a fight broke out between he and the group, and he ended up being stabbed more than a dozen times with a screwdriver. Surveillance video from a nearby gas station led detectives to 2 men in their 20s and 2 juvenile girls, all Oxford Township residents. The victim is expected to recover.
The Oxford Village Council placed a 180-day moratorium on any business intending to distribute or sell legal marijuana within Oxford Village limits. Currently, federal law prohibits sale and distribution of the drug. It appears, however, there is pressure on the federal level to change that position to allow the sale legally. In anticipation of possible law changes, Council enacted the moratorium as a let's wait and see approach before development of unnecessary local ordinances. For more information, you can contact Village Manager Joe Young.
Oxford Village Council is seeking a potential buyer for the Old Township Hall located at 18 West Burdick. Approval for the sale was given by voters in the 2012 general election.
Put some numbers here together for your consideration on your deliberation whether or not to consider advertising for just the sale of that building with parking as appropriate, to see what interest there might be, since it is vacant and does need money to bring it up.
Village Attorney Bob Davis suggested to sell the building as is, adding without the parking spaces.
But not necessarily to own. If we were to grant them with the planning commission that they don't have to purchase, if they purchase a building, that they will have access to X amount of parking spots, we can still get rid of this property. And we're not in the real estate market, guys.
Get it?
I don't think that we have the funds to go in and redo it right now and be liable for the changes. I just went through this with another property of my own.
The village manager said some investors have been interested in the property, however, no results have materialized.
A debate over wording concerning the draft of a facade grant program was volley at the Oxford Village DDA meeting this week. Board member Rod Charles was concerned the way the current draft reads will give government too much power over building owners.
But like I said, I have 2 issues with this here. Number one, 3 bids from licensed contractors. If you want it as an FYI, great. But if I'm doing a building, it's my choice who I'm picking. And it might not be the lowest, it might not be the highest, but it's my choice, it's my money. And it's my property, not yours. I think the language has to be rejiggered a little bit to make it more flexible.
EA Director Joel Frost reiterated the current draft language is standard for most communities.
I will say that that's standard language with many a facade grant program. Most of this is boilerplate type stuff from other communities that have facade grants. And some of this, to be honest, is a little more lax than most communities, because some communities, you can't do anything to that facade for 5 years, because we have committed taxpayer money to the rehabilitation of that facade. So in some places, some programs, they'll even put an easement on it for 5 years to ensure that that property, that investment stays there.
Also at the meeting, Sullivan's pub owner Jerry Cremens informed the board that since the village changed trash haulers, he has not been satisfied with the results.
When we switched over, we went, I'm pretty sure we went from 4 dumpsters down to 3 dumpsters in our North Washington location. I'm not sure about behind Centennial Park. And I know there was quite the discussion about, dropping one to go to another company for the savings of a couple of dollars a month. Personally, I'd have a problem with that. I mean, the dumpsters are smaller, and we went from 4 to 3. So, I mean, the dumpsters are overflowing, especially the recycling one. I'd say after 2 days, it's overflowing. So, to go from 4 to 3, as I said, for the sake of saving a couple of dollars a month, and then we have less, it just doesn't make sense.
From local business owners and state representatives to community representatives, past state legislators to our Oakland County Executive Al Brooks Patterson. Everybody turned out for a very special ribbon cutting in Oxford. Christian Mills, developer of the new Legacy Center, had over 200 guests attend his gala this week, all in the support of his business, which could potentially bring more than 300 jobs to the area.
Brooks actually gave me a word of advice, which I really like, because Bill had mentioned taxes, and it's probably the best part of this whole event so far. He said we should become a church.
An East Lake Trail resident discovered his .357 Ruger was missing from his car this week. He left the gun in his car while out of town on business trip, and when he came home, the gun was gone. Although the vehicle showed no signs of forced entry, police are investigating likely suspects. Women beware, even shopping in our small community could be hazardous. There could be unsavory characters lurking. Officers were called to a local shopping center after store security identified a man taking pictures behind a woman going through a checkout. The man was seen leaning behind the lady with a cell phone positioned under her skirt. Police arrived in time to apprehend the man and obtain a surveillance tape for evidence. The man was issued an appearance citation for arraignment in court. Well, what next?
Oh, I'm telling you, what people think up to do to one another.
I've heard
It's
those
just
stories,
amazing to me.
in Detroit, but, in a local small community like this, who would think?
I have never heard of that one before. That one caught me by surprise. Good Lord, between that and those kids stabbing a guy with a screwdriver for his car. And then you have the guy that goes out of town and leaves his gun unlocked in his car. Come on.
And, that happens too frequently. People leave their cars unlocked.
gosh.
People shouldn't do that because, people have their wallets stolen, all kinds of things. You think, well, I'll be back in just a
Right.
few moments.
Right.
Or, when you're finished
Or
at the end of a
a
day,
week
you
and
leave
a
your car
half.
unlocked. A week and a half, I'll be back.
Jeez, oh, Pete.
Actually, I was at the sheriff's department, and a deputy told me that, when I said, well, why would people leave their cars unlocked? He said, I have to be embarrassed here because they happened to me. He said, I left my weapon in the car, he said, and thought the car was locked. It was not. And he said, I came back to find it missing along with my badge.
Oh, my goodness.
He said, but it did turn up, several months later.
In some kind of crime somewhere else,
No,
probably.
well, actually, it was a general traffic stop, and there was a weapon. And the guy claimed he got it at a pawn shop.
Yeah.
But
well,
he said,
that can
anyway,
happen too.
he learned from
But
that one. He said, he always
if you're a
double-checks.
gun owner, there is just absolutely no excuse for carelessness.
No.
That gun should either be on your person if you're a gun carrier or in a safe as soon as you take it off. Kids could get a hold of it. It could be used in a crime. I'm telling you what, if you want to be responsible for being a gun carrier, you have to follow it all the way through. I don't know. I'm just really frustrated. I'm
Children
frustrated
are,
this week.
they're really fascinated.
Oh, my goodness,
with weapons. And,
Yeah.
and you don't want those dangers, to take
Right.
a life in your family, especially the little ones. And
Oh my goodness,
so
how
be careful.
devastating.
Lock
They're
them
a
up.
piece of machinery. Anyhow, so if you feel like we were shaking our bossy finger at you, it wasn't you, it's the guy that does it. That's it for the Oxford News this week. If you want to learn more about these stories and others, stop by your your local store and pick up a copy of the Oxford Leader newspaper, or better yet, catch us right here on OCTV Charter Channel 191, AT&T Channel 99, and Leonard, you can catch us right here on Channel 19.
And coming up next on OCTV, Oxford Sports with Jamie Hughes, and catch Oxford School News with John Ochins. And don't forget Dave Kenny with Auto Talk and Science in the News.
I'm Terry Stiles, and this is Oxford News This Week, where we bring your news closer to home.
And I'm Elgin Nichols. Remember, always be kind to your friends and neighbors, and thanks for watching.
Welcome to Science in the News. I'm Dave Kenny, and these stories are taken from the publication New Scientist. Quick, can you tell where north is? Animals as diverse as sea turtles, birds, worms, butterflies, and wolves can, thanks to sensing Earth's magnetic field. But the magnetic sensing structures inside their cells that allow them to do this have evaded scientists until now. A team led by Kan Shiz at Peking University in China has found a protein in fruit flies, butterflies, and pigeons that they believe to be responsible for this magnetic sense. There used to be two compelling theories about magnetic sense. Some thought it came from iron-binding molecules, others thought it came from a protein called cryptochrome, which senses light and has been linked to magnetic sense in birds. Shiz's group was the first to guess that these two were part of the same system and has now figured out how they fit together. Shiz's team first screened the fruit fly genome for a protein that would fit a very specific bill. The molecule had to bind to iron. It had to be expressed inside a cell instead of on the cell membrane, and had to do so in an animal's head, where animals tend to sense magnetic fields, and it also had to interact with cryptochrome. We found one gene fit all of our predictions, said she. They called it MAG-R, and then used techniques including electron microscopy and computer modeling to figure out the protein structure. They found that MAG-R and cryptochrome proteins formed a cylinder with an inside filling of 20 MAG-R molecules surrounded by 10 cryptochromes. The researchers then identified and isolated this protein complex from pigeons and monarch butterflies. In the lab, the proteins snapped into alignment in response to a magnetic field. They were so strongly magnetic that they flew up and stuck to the researchers' tools that contained iron, so the team had to use custom tools made of plastic. The team hasn't yet tried to remove the MAG-R protein from an animal like a fruit fly to see if it loses its magnetic sense, but she believes the proteins work the same way in a living animal. Although this protein complex seems to form the basis of magnetic sense, the exact mechanism is still to be figured out. One idea is that when an animal changes directions, the proteins may swing around to point north, just like a compass needle, says she. Perhaps the protein's movement could trigger a connected molecule, which would then send a signal to the nervous system, and we're not lost anymore. In our next story, so that's why bees are always so busy. Some flowers produce caffeinated nectar, and bees that get hooked are more active, but also potentially less productive. Margaret Coubillon at the University of Sussex studied whether bees given sugar water containing caffeine at levels like those in nectar would come back for more. After 3 hours, the sugar water supply ran dry, but the bees kept returning in search of caffeine. They were kind of desperate, Coubillon said. The team found that caffeine warps other foraging behaviors. Bees pumped on it, performed more enthusiastic waggle dances, encouraging more of the colony to head for the caffeinated nectar source. Can you say Starbucks? In our last story, dried up glue may come in useful. A new powdered form of adhesive developed by researchers in Japan could help in building hard-to-reach parts of the cars and smartphones. Most glues are either liquids that dry to form a bond or solids that are heated to make them viscous and sticky and then bond when cooled. Now, Shuji Fuji of Osaka Institute of Technology in Japan and his colleagues have come up with a dry powder that becomes a sticky glue when squished. The powder is made up of liquid marbles, beads of liquid coated in liquid and solid particles that trap the fluid inside. In this case, the team rolled spheres of latex liquid in a layer of calcium carbonate nanoparticles. The resulting drops are a few millimeters across and pour easily, but when put under pressure for a few seconds, the nanoparticles are pushed inside, exposing the sticky liquid within to the surface. The team's tests show that the glue forms stronger bonds than other pressure-sensitive adhesives, PSAs that is, like those found in Post-it notes or sticky tape. Our PSA materials can adhere substrates with a rough surface like wood, which are difficult to be bonded using Scotch tape, says Fuji. Because the material can be poured before its stickiness is activated, Fuji thinks it would be particularly useful in getting glue into odd spots or tight spots. The PSA powder can flow into confined and intricate spaces, he says. To satisfy design properties in the automobile, aerospace, and electronics industries, there's a strong need to join parts with complicated shapes, he says. And good luck. Well, that's all for this edition of Science in the News. I'm Dave Kenny. Stay tuned to Oxford Community Television, and we'll be right back.
I'm John Ochins, and welcome to the Oxford Wildcats School Update. This is the year of reviews and plans. We've heard a lot about the upcoming strategic plan, reviews by educational officials, along with various class tweakings coming up. The International Baccalaureate program is no exception. Teacher Rita Flynn is one of those in charge of our primary year International Baccalaureate program. This is the year of self-study. It's more than that, though. Rita describes.
Since we have what's called a self-study coming up in all of our elementary buildings, OES will be first to be reauthorized for the self-study. And what that is we have 2 days where we'll be having visitors come in, and they're going to be looking over really everything that we do in our schools. So everything that we do is weaved into the IB curriculum as well. So for instance,
who are these people? Where are they from?
They're from, they're from the IB world, and it's international. So I talk with people from London to Africa to Egypt. We have a network in which we can communicate, but I also have something that I call, it's called the help desk. So if I do have questions in regards to when our visitation is, there's this IB world community where we have people like me that help to train the teachers and the students and work with administration to support our teachers in the IB philosophy.
So what exactly is self-study?
They're looking at our philosophy, our leadership, our curriculum, our assessment. And I think the biggest thing that people say is, well, what makes you so unique? If you're an IB school, what makes that unique? And it's really the collaboration that's intentionally built into the program.
Rita talks about one of the biggest changes for teachers when becoming IB.
Now, I was a teacher when we started the IB process, and the biggest shift I could say as a teacher during that time was we had to collaborate and share ideas. So it really made it an even playing field for teachers that have been teaching for 30 years, and this is going on my 10th year, but
was it kind of a tough transition at first?
I think it depends on your personality. I welcome change, and I'm in the perfect position because I welcome change. But I think for other teachers, absolutely, because it was a shift because you had to share ideas, and to some degree, I figured out I really wanted to get to the core of, why at times we may not want to share how we're doing things in the classroom. And it's not because we don't want to share because we want to have it to ourselves. It's we think, well, are they going to really like it? I don't want to put one more thing on their plate. Teachers are very conscious of each other and their feelings. They're always really mindful of that. So it's never coming from a negative place. It's always coming from a positive place.
So what is self-study really doing?
It's really reflecting on all the good you do in the building. And I think that's another thing that makes IB really special is it forces you to reflect, because that's when the learning happens.
This review will be repeated every 5 years after this.
The IB world will send, they'll send 2 visitors to come in to evaluate our school. And once we have those dates in mind, which we do for OES, it's going to be January 21st and 22nd. They'll come in and they'll have an agenda, but they'll have to meet with all stakeholders. So they're going to come and talk to our students, our parents, all administration, the board. They have to, all of our teachers, so myself. So it's a pretty intense process, but it's great to highlight what we do. I kind of look at it not as an evaluation, but as a way to just really highlight and educate them about what we do.
There's a lot that they have to live up to.
we have 110 standards that IB has that we have to accommodate. So we have the action plan that shows the evidence of that. So a standard may be, what kind of action do your students take? That makes us unique in the sense that we intentionally teach our students how to take action to make the world a better place, because that is giving them the skills to be a really well-rounded person. Because if you want to do good for others, that is teaching you to be appreciative and caring and knowledgeable. So I have to have documentation of, well, how do we do that?
PYP Coordinator Rita Flynn. That's the Oxford School Update for this week. Jamie Hughes is up next with sports. This is Oxford Community Television, keeping it local.
Back with you in Oxford News this week. Time for Oxford Sports. The Lady Cat Spikers had a full week of postseason play. Oxford played Waterford Mott in the district quarterfinals on November 2nd, where they had won all games. The first game was 25-6, which is due to a 16-point serving run by senior Haley Hartwig. Game 2 was a 16 win, and Game 3 was a 25-12 win. Top scorers of the night included Nicole Elzerman, 10 kills, Lisa Savage at 6, Grace Pasaki, 5, Paige Briggs, 7 kills. Hartwig had 13 digs, 6 aces. The win garnered them a semifinal play against Waterford Kettering. That took place on November 4th, where they again took 3 games, 25-13, 25-11, and 25-16 respectively. Top scorers included Elzerman at 14 kills, Savage at 10, Marie Mathis 8 kills. Hartwig had 10 digs, and Amanda Schlicht topped in with 35 assists and 4 aces. That win would take them down the street to district finals. They would face their foes, the Dragons, Lake Orion, who was ranked number 2 in the state. Oxford started slow and lost the game by 1 score, 25-12. Oxford was able to pick up the momentum and was able to start strong, leading 6-1. Early in the game, however, due to some unforced errors, Lake Orion was able to make scoring runs to take the lead. Oxford played hard, putting up blocks, playing great defense. The game went for point. Oxford ended up losing that, though, 27-25. Oxford went into Game 3 playing hard and ultimately lost that one as well, 25-19. Guess what? Say it with me. Those Dragons, the Lake Orion Dragons, were crowned district champs. Jumping into the pool, Oxford High School hosted the OAA Blue Division League meet during a Wednesday meeting contest. The 25 Oxford swimmers each swam 2 individual events, won 2 relays. Of the 50 individual events swam on Wednesday, 36 season best times. That's amazing. Of the remaining 14 swims that were not improvements, many were very close. On Friday, Oxford swam and dove very well and finished 4th in place in that contest. The final team standings were as follows. Farmington, a strong team at 562. Troy Athens, 387. Stony Creek, 343. Oxford right there in the middle at 300. Ferndale down to 177. Avondale, 136. Southfield, Lathrop, 86. And Hazel Park in at 68. A lot of personal bests in the pool. All sporting events this past week, obviously with the events in Paris, were canceled following the tragedies that took place on Friday, announcing the closure of public places and sporting events for the rest of the weekend. Racing Metro 92's European Rugby Cup encounter with Glasgow Warriors didn't take place as well. A statement of the Top 14 Racing's website read as follows. Following the tragic events of last night and the game between Racing 92 and Glasgow Warriors, it is postponed. The new date will be announced as soon as possible. Racing 92 expresses its sorrow and solidarity with all the families and the victims. If you have an Oxford athlete in the Oxford Athletic System, check out their website. It's always available at your fingertips, oxfordathletics.org. Again, that's all one word, oxfordathletics.org. It'll let you know where your athlete's supposed to be, schedules, events, and even scores right there at your fingertips. While you're on the website, we urge you to join our website at occtv.org. You can catch any one of the programs we do tape or video here, all meetings, sporting events, any program can be right there at your fingertips, occtv.org. You can catch it on YouTube, on your computer, iPad, or phone, wherever you so choose to watch it. We broadcast our sporting events on the weekends between 1:30 and 6. We urge you to stay tuned for that. We're looking forward to a great season of hoop action right there on the court with the Lady Wildcats and the gentlemen on the basketball court. But again, log on to our website, occtv.org. Just a salute and a thoughts to all the victims that in Paris for this past weekend, taking place at a sporting event. Anyways, our thoughts here in the United States and here at OCTV for those victims. Till we do it all over again, have yourself a great week, everybody. We'll check in again with sports next week.
Welcome to this edition of Auto Talk. I'm Dave Kenny, and these stories are taken from the publication Automotive News. The Lincoln MKZ will be the first car to drop the brand's split-wing grille in favor of a rectangular design that debuted on the Continental concept. The 2017 MKZ, scheduled to go on sale next summer, will introduce a 3-liter turbocharged V6 engine that's exclusive to Lincoln and rated at 400 horsepower when paired with all-wheel drive. That's 100 more than the most powerful engine on the current MKZ, which is Lincoln's highest volume nameplate. Ford Motor Company unveiled the refreshed versions of both the MKZ and the Ford Escape crossover at the Los Angeles Auto Show. The MKZ features a number of technologies aimed at making driving less stressful, including active hold, which keeps the car stopped at a traffic light without continuously depressing the brake pedal, and adaptive cruise control with stop-go, meaning the car can automatically follow the flow of traffic even through periodic standstills. Lincoln returns to buttons and knobs for audio and climate controls that are easier to use while driving. High-end options include 2 new black label themes, Chalet and Vineyard, and 2 levels of Revell audio systems. The base engine is a carryover 2-liter 4-cylinder, and a gas-electric hybrid option will remain. The 3-liter engine replaces a 3.7-liter naturally aspirated V6 at 300 horsepower and 277 pound-feet of torque. Pretty spiffy. And in the auto industry, General Motors will be the only one of Detroit 3 making compact or mid-size cars in the U.S. by 2019, according to the company's new UAW agreements. Ford Motor Company and Fiat Chrysler Automobiles are essentially giving up on trying to build mass-market cars profitably in this country, instead shifting most production of those nameplates to Mexico so they can dedicate U.S. plants to higher-margin pickups and SUVs. The UAW is accepting that trade-off to get rid of the 2-tier wage scale that was vital to the business case for the U.S.-made sedans because it expects a net increase in jobs. The result, in a few years, it will be far easier to find a Japanese or Korean car produced domestically than one designed in Detroit that's not imported. Foreign brands are expected to keep their U.S. plants churning out high-volume cars such as the Toyota Camry and Honda Accord. But increasingly, Ford and FCA see the U.S. as a place to build light trucks. Ford product comments to the UAW show that it plans to halt U.S. production of 4 car nameplates, the Fusion, Focus, Taurus, and C-Max. The Focus and C-Max are moving out of Ford's Michigan assembly plant in 2018 to make way for 2 vehicles that sources have identified as the Ranger pickup and Bronco SUV. The Fusion is built in Mexico already, while the Taurus, with sales plummeting here but surging in China, may be discontinued in North America. Meanwhile, FCA is expected to move the Dodge Dart and Chrysler 200 to Mexico after 2016 and will discontinue the Dodge Viper in 2017, which would leave no cars in the U.S. The cars that Ford and FCA are moving out of the U.S. and the Buick Verano, which GM is expected to move to either Mexico or China, account for 45% of domestic car brand production in the U.S. for the first 10 months of this year, according to Automotive News data center estimates. GM hasn't announced any sweeping changes in where it will assemble its cars. It makes most of its sedans in the U.S., including the Chevy Sonic at a plant in Michigan, say Lake Orion, and reopened specifically because the UAW agreed to cut costs there with 2-tier wages. The danger in focusing U.S. plants on SUVs and pickups is what could happen if gas prices spike again. But Eric Merkel, Ford's chief U.S. sales analyst, said the booming popularity of SUVs is less a function of low gasoline prices than how much the vehicle has improved and consumer needs have changed as baby boomers and their children get older. And at VW is showcasing an updated version of the Beetle Dune, which takes styling cues from the off-road Baja Bugs popular in the 1960s and 1970s in California. It'll be built starting next year in coupe and convertible models, and the 2016 Beetle Dune gets a new and tougher-looking front and rear fascias and black wheel arch extensions. The Dune, powered by a 180 horsepower 1.8-liter gasoline turbo 4-cylinder, will get a few chassis changes also. The track is 0.6 inches wider, and the ride height has been increased by 0.4 inches over the standard Beetle. The interior gets special seats, and its infotainment system has a 6.3-inch screen with a capacitive touch sensor, so it works much like a cell phone or a tablet. VW says the Beetle Dune will be available in yellow, white, or black, no other choices, and no prices have yet been announced, but keep your hand on your wallet. Well, that's all for this edition of Auto Talk. I'm Dave Kenny, and as always, may the wind be at your back as you cruise down life's highways. Stay tuned to Oxford Community Television, and we'll be right back.